we get my nurses happening?
I find that at times it's necessary to ask that person to leave and come back when they can be compliant with Robert's Rules of Order and the protocols that set forth and standards by UCLA. That creates maybe a step backwards to the more enhanced approach. And I use that same type of analogy within my patients I see in healing. If you can't comply with the problem that you're having and your health issues, then after I remove that specific test tube or lobe or things like that, then let that just take you out of there, and then you can grow, to grow. So we're asking at this next point in February, you do need to leave until you can comply with the standards. And that hurts because it's a UCLA Bruin. Hurts deeply, but you have to grow. You have to walk forward.
I think it's exactly it. You have to admit you have the problem, and sometimes treatment's painful. But it's the goodwill that you're expressing. It's for the good of the order. It's not a personal, like you're trying to get somebody.
Because we scared away 5 people in the first meeting because this person was unruly. And they're never coming back until they see that he has been excised from that specific.
You poisoned the well. Absolutely. I saw another. Great.
Yeah, more of a comment. The Arizona network. We've spent the last 3 months completely, not rewriting, but updating our bylaws because they hadn't been changed since the Gadsden purchase.
Yes.
And, you know, with social media, you know, we need people in charge of that. You know, so we spent a lot of time and effort in redoing it. We actually just passed the new bylaws at our last meeting. This isn't something that is in our bylaws. Should we add it? My other comment is, look at your bylaws and really read them and see if they are up to date. Because, I mean, there was stuff in ours that was, you know, just make no sense anymore. So.
I've heard that before. If it's useful, I think it should be added. But again, going back to Patty's point, you try not to cram it down somebody's throat until you have to do that for the good of, for the common folk. I think that we should, let's try to move on.
We've got some time
questions
to
for the
end.
How about that? But thank you so much for your interest in this. There are some other things that you can do about Founder's syndrome, and these are some of those suggestions.
Timed or consent agendas? Anybody use a timed agenda? Okay. 60 minutes? You're done. Consent agenda. Anybody use consent agenda? South Bay. Whoop, whoop. You don't know what a consent agenda is? Not an expert, but I'm a professional. Or I play one on TV. Talk to me about a consent agenda because Mike, can you testimonial consent agenda? Ed?
Oh, well.
Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Well, the meeting, board meeting was on from the minutia to actually very streamlined, pertinent information that we get done in a timely manner. So instead of saying, 90 minutes, 2 hours, yes, 2 hours, now we're done in about 60 minutes or longer.
Fabulous. I know Gold Shield also uses a consent agenda. It's a tool. It's a suggested tool if you're struggling with that because you're right, people are not going to stay for 3 hours. That's probably going to affect your attendance and enthusiasm.
A timed agenda also makes sure that one person doesn't dominate the conversation. Because you got to move on. 2 minutes and we're moving on.
But a comment about that.
Can you speak up a little bit?
For all the increased efficiency and shortening of meetings, you do lose something. You lose more opportunities for interaction, and some of the meetings may be the only time that members of a fairly large family can get together. So for all the pluses, there is a potential loss.
Right.
And there's no getting away.
You just have to balance what is better for you, and that is true of all organizations or individual, and of course the ultimate goal is what's going to
bundling business that's transpired into a document that's reviewed by the board, and it's non-discussion items, things that don't require discussion or action. So, for example, you will have your treasurer's report, you'll have your past minutes, you'll have committee reports, maybe you have a report on activities that happened, how many people came, what it was like, what the day was like, and that all gets bundled in a consent agenda. People review it before the meeting, they vote to accept it, everything's okay, the minutes, the treasurer's report, everything, they accept it, and then all you're talking about at a board meeting is either strategic planning or action items. Should we charge $50 or $60 for this? Are we going to have the event on this day or this day? Who's going to step up? Action items only go on an agenda. The consent agenda is really bundled business. Can we
I was going to say real quick, to combine both the interaction and the meeting, have a social half hour before, and that's the interaction.
Exactly, that's such a good compromise, because it's allowing business to be brisk, but then you still get to socialize.
Another way to open up attendance at board meetings is dial-in. Steve is great at this. They do every other meeting as a conference call, so and that speeds it along as well. We also use it here at Alumni Affairs, especially our alumni board, because we have people that are global, literally global. So they're calling in from Asia, they're calling in from other parts of the country because they can't be here. It works, it's very effective, works well. We can have subcommittees report to a full board instead of an executive committee. In the case of the professional schools, the dean started attending as well.
Right, exactly. That was with a meritized situation that you mentioned. The dean was a counterbalance, and so if there's a way to do that in your group also, you may not have a dean, but you know what I'm saying, the dynamic of that was very beneficial.
Another treatment for founder syndrome is to introduce service recognition. I think to your point about, someone who was on the board, hanging on, still wants to be involved. A lot of boards don't do this. Alumni board does it really well, where they recognize those people with service. Thank you out the door. I heard someone talk the other night about Fiorello LaGuardia, who was the mayor, and he kept getting reelected. And finally, the council bought him a Cadillac, which was their way of saying, "Here's your farewell gift. Thank you." And I thought that's a great way to do it. It provides closure and an endpoint and gives some dignity to your leader.
I have another example about a way that this was nicely handled. Again, speaking of past leadership as well as recognition. There's a volunteer group I'm involved in, and once a year they have an annual meeting, and all the past leaders come and have a 2-minute update they each offer to the group. It's such a spectacular thing. First of all, like 30 of these past leaders show up. People are so invested. This is a sustaining membership in this organization, like Gold Shield, and it is such an impressive display of service, commitment, and legacy, seeing these people all lined up on the stage. I just love that. That was good.
One last suggestion to ward off flare-ups of founder syndrome: it's important that your leadership plant the seeds for new talent. New talent is the agent of change. We often have found leaders delegate this task to a nominating committee in order to be able to devote themselves to the primary goal. And that also allows people to get involved at a different level. Transition planning is like preventative medicine. Founder syndrome need not be fatal. You don't have to die from it. If treated, it can be avoided.
Okay, now this is the end of this segment, and we could take questions. I just want to be mindful of time so that
It's 11:30. You have half an hour.
right. So we have a half an hour. We have 2 more modules. I would suggest we move on unless there's a burning desire. Okay. Okay, great. So.
Okay, in the next section, we're going to discuss leadership burnout.
Speaking of burning desire.
There's a lot of ways to describe burnout, maybe like a personal Groundhog Day, or feeling it's a life sentence.
You have a half of it.
Can you see?
Yeah, I bet you'd like us to wear a hat.
Orange is the new black.
So the point, of course, is to avoid burnout by using some tools that we're going to discuss to safeguard against it. A leader suffering from burnout, it has a ripple effect on the board too, just like founder syndrome does. I think you have a story about that.
Yeah, I have a current leader in a network, names omitted to protect the innocent. Really just, I could see it was like a slog up a hill. It was pushing that rock. And through some innovative programming, new people came on board, there was renewed energy, and honestly, there's pep in his step. And I've talked to him about, he's coming to the end of his term limit, and I've been on bended knee to ask him to stay on, and I'm hoping I can persuade him today to do so.
Okay. Does everybody know the story of the Tower of Babel? I guess it's like a parable. The version that I know about this is that once upon a time there was someone who was interested in building a tower to heaven. And they got a group together who was similarly interested. This is how affinity groups started, maybe. And the problem was that they hadn't gotten proper permission from compliance. I mean, from heaven. And so because of that, because heaven was protecting its brand, heaven very gently had to disband the group. And the way that heaven did this was that they gave each person their own dialect, which is probably how regional groups started. But the point is there that communication broke down, and really the point of this story is that if you have a lack of communication, poor communication, bad communication, you get a bad outcome from that. And I think, whoops, I'm dropping my equipment. I think that that leads me right into this section where we're talking about burnout, and we want to avoid the mission of boards of the Tower of Babel, exactly. And I think a really great way to sum it up comes from, in terms of teamwork and leadership, this is John Wood's great quote, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. We could say it like a prayer together, right? So let's talk about some strategies that we have seen some leaders use to avoid burnout. Suzy.
First is adequate planning. This is big because it avoids widespread confusion about what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, how it needs to be done.
I was in a board meeting in the last year and a half, I guess, and they were really struggling with this. They were just playing catch up, and there was lack of planning because there was inadequate coverage, I think, from the board as well, but it was clearly in disarray because of this particular problem.
Second is delegation and good job descriptions. A leader really benefits from delegating, especially with those job descriptions. Board members know what their role is and can pace themselves. Like running a marathon, as we do tomorrow. When you know how long the course is, it helps you prepare. Delegation should come from the top down. More people is not necessarily more efficiency.
Yeah, delegation requires people to delegate to as well, you know, or the few that are standing there can kind of shrink from the task. To your point, DC, you're trying to get some traction, maybe you don't have quite enough people, and you got to move carefully for a sustainability element. On the other hand, more people does not mean more efficiency. And back to the Tower of Babel thing, you have to plan it out well. Having a lot of people sitting around with no defined role is really creating a Tower of Babel opportunity. Suzy, you have an example?
I do, and Mike Smith, forgive me for calling that South Bay, but I think this is a good way. They have an annual holiday party, and to the point of, you know, we're doing everything, you know, let's choose this and this. Mike delegated the task this year to one person, and she asked for help if anyone wanted to help her. But he left everything in her hands. It was probably the most successful holiday party they have ever had. She was on top of everything, soup to nuts. It was a great event. but one person was running this. He delegated it. When people started to interfere, Mike said, this is her event. If you want to be on her committee and help her out, that's what you can do. That's where you can help out. But it is her event, and it was fabulous, right? Whoop, whoop.
Great. Great. Okay, so then the third suggestion is strategic recruitment. You want to be sure, I would say, that I would want to be sure, and I think you feel the same, that the jobs that you're recruiting for have kept up with the times. Otherwise, you're going to end up with something. And that's just not really a valuable use of your time, recruiting for something that has not kept up with the times.
Sometimes qualifications are so restrictive that an adequate pool is not recruited. Too stringent or picky process can result in no candidates. I'm a member of a group, and just a couple weeks ago they had an event because they're recruiting new members. It was out of the box thinking. They put a call out, and the event was very successful. Identified a lot of people who were interested in joining the group, who had the opportunity to learn about the group, and made their decisions whether or not they wanted to have their names forwarded for membership consideration. So it was an excellent tool. Moving on, the fourth one, but we've always done it that way. Anybody familiar with that?
Yeah. We all probably understand this. And you know, actually, there's nothing wrong with, we've always done it that way if it's working for you. You know, that's a tradition and a best practice. There's lots of those. But I think the point is, if you're doing the same thing over and over again and getting bad results, that also is considered the definition of insanity.
Yep.
And it's time to maybe consider some other opportunities. It's like with founder syndrome. It's time to let go. And so I just wanted, there's two sides to this. You know, our support groups have a tremendous legacy, and you're doing things that got you where you are, and those are wonderful things. But I think it's something to consider here. This is kind of a shameless plug that I'm going to take an opportunity to make for Alumni Affairs, because we're really here to, it's up to the group to decide, but we're here to assist you. And I've been grateful to volunteers, frankly, and Suzy had this experience too, who said to us when we reorganized that it was a little hard for them to open the door to us. You know, we had some policy changes, and you all were on the forefront of some of those. And some people said, you know, honestly, we've seen this before, there's changes, and it's going to change again next year. So, you know, there was a certain element of people standing back. And we're talking about trust, you know, and trust has to be earned. But we feel like we're getting somewhere now. We feel like we're all kind of moving in a similar direction, and we think that the tools that we've offered to you, you're embracing them as it's useful to your groups, and you're getting results from that, and that's pretty exciting to us, I want to say. So if you do need help in some transition, way, shape, or form, we'd love to be there for you. And I guess my point is, you don't have to wait for burnout to seek asylum in our volunteer protection program. You know what I'm saying? You could just be smoldering a little, perhaps. How about that?
Nothing would make us happier than helping you take the heat off or just make your work easier. Perhaps some of the tools we offer could be useful. And we have a lot. We have staff, we have technology, we have training.
Right. One of the groups I was working with came to us, and this is burnout. They had operations running in the red. The board person who was managing their external communications had moved away. Two people in the leadership vacuum had stepped up and were both serving in the president's role, and they just felt like they weren't quite keeping up. And so they sat down with us, and we talked with them and gave them some of the experience of some of you other groups that are doing very well. And I think there's some turnaround. There's a board member who became available from another group that has a lot of expertise and came in. They've got some new membership ID. It's turning around. You know, you can feel it sometimes before you see it. And I definitely feel that there, and that's a wonderful thing. I guess the point is that people make mistakes. They get overcommitted as volunteers. I've done it. And it's very possible to turn that around. You know, it's not like the Titanic. You can actually turn the boat around before you hit the iceberg. I think part of building an organization, these were some of our thoughts, is to allow breathing room, because we make mistakes. You know, we make mistakes. It's not making the mistake that's the problem. And I know I preach to you the choir. It's how do we manage it? And you can learn from example. You can clear the air when there is a mistake. I think it's easy to talk about it, is what I've seen. I believe unresolved issues in a room or reopening old wounds that have actually been put to bed is counterproductive at board meetings. And we actually find it's a turnoff when you're trying to attract new people if grievances are put too much at the forefront at a board meeting. Those are maybe side conversations, but what is your experience with that, Suzy? I know I have one. I'd like to share unless you have one.
No, go ahead.
The new leader in a group did a wonderful thing. I'm sure he's not the only person who did this. When he became the president, he contacted some people that he knew were not happy with the group and invited them to, you know, have a frank and open discussion. I thought that was a tremendous leadership move. You know, it's something you could easily just step aside, and this person tried to open the door and embrace as possible the people in the organization who perhaps weren't feeling things were going the way they felt it should. It's a consensus type of building, and that's terrific, I think. Okay, so now were there anything anybody would like to add, or do you have any questions for this module? We're going to move on to the next one. If not, going. Moving on. So now we're going to talk about fresh blood. Very important. This is one of my new volunteer leaders. I met him over at the blood center. He puts Affinity at a whole new, you know, level. And I do think it's actually a very important topic, fresh blood. So you need fresh blood, right? Because otherwise the group obsolesces. It's an obvious thing, but it's not that easy to accomplish sometimes. Or maybe you don't quite know how to get traction there. Involving young alumni is a very important thing, but there's a bigger topic there, really. Fresh blood is a little different than just younger alumni. Younger alumni are very important, and we are pumping out 7,000 new alumni every year here in June. But fresh blood includes also others in the organization. Maybe people who have been doing one thing and they have experience, where maybe newer members don't have experience in particular areas. And they can bring a fresh set of eyes and enthusiasm to a project, along with the expertise to move it forward. And I think that's a really important thing. It's not a rule, however, that younger members do not have experience, but I just want to mention that. In fact, one of our groups, Faculty Women's Club, and I'm not using anonymity anymore because these are positives, and I want to put the praise out there. Faculty Women's Club is a long-time women's group here on campus, and they created a young professional section, and a younger member of faculty is running this train and doing a wonderful job and has the chops for it. So I just want you not to think we think the rule is younger people don't have the expertise. They do. But I think fresh blood encompasses more than that. Yes, sir?
I think part of it is dependent upon what you think is young blood too. I mean, some of us in this room are in our 50s and 60s, so younger may just be 40.
Exactly.
One thing I would encourage, I don't know how the Alumni Association is doing it, giving the student alumni more training in running groups so that matures them sooner for when they come out to these networks. They have some basics to start with.
It's interesting that you say that, because a lot of the young alumni who do come to board meetings, so what were you involved with? Honestly, I'm sorry, I don't have an hour here. You were in SAA, you were in USAC, you were in Alumni Scholars Club, you were Bruin Woods. It's amazing. These students are phenomenal.
I understand they're involved, but giving them the tools so they know how to run meetings, I think that's really where, talking to the leadership function of these networks, I think that's what I'm talking about.
Right, and to your point, we have a number of programs through Center for Student Programming, which is now renamed actually to Leadership Engagement and Training. We also have something called Leadership. We have a few things.
Okay.
And I think you've made an excellent point, but I want you to know we're trying to address that as well as preparing them professionally for the world. Thank you.
I know this is a different session, but Fresh Blood doesn't just mean young alumni. We're basically, our core is young alumni, just inherent to the nature of our geographic area, but we're having a hard time recruiting sort of older alums, and by older, I mean like I'm the second oldest person on our board, so that should tell you, and I've been involved for 6 years, so that should tell you something. Like we are having problems with anyone 35 and older. Like we don't have that demographic, or we don't know how to recruit that demographic because they live far out in the suburbs. They don't want to come into the city. They have kids. They have those transportation issues. So we don't have sort of the resources to market to those people or to put on an event that those people would want. Like when UCLA on the Road comes, that's when we see those people, or Dinner for Total Strangers come, that's when we see those people. But keep in mind that Fresh Blood is not just like young alumni straight out of UCLA, but it's also alums from age diversity and gender, as well as LGBT and like racial diversity as well. Because we've had some issues with that in the past as well.
But it's really an interesting point. It is broad, roomy, and all-inclusive, the term, definitely.
Just to sort of build on something that Suzy just said, something that was brought up at our last meeting was sort of a way to coordinate all of the subgroups, you know, like the diversity, the young alumni, the business network, like all of these subgroups. There's very little interaction, very little communication in between them. And so you have like, at least here, at least for us in the Bay Area, you have say like, you know, you have the overall big network, but then there's all these different subgroups, you know, who have like more specific things, but it's like we want to try and, you know, get these other groups involved as sort of fresh blood, so to speak. So it's not just people who have heard about, you know, UCLA, you know, alum, because I think some of the people, like say Anderson, aren't on, you know, alumni affairs list. You know, they'll hear about something separately, maybe through other channels, or maybe because they know somebody through somebody, you know, so it's like, I think that would really help. So like, I know there's a diversity group, I know there's a young alumni, I know there's Brew professionals, you know, there's so many different groups out there, and I think it would really help to kind of find a way to coordinate, you know, with all of these different wonderful groups out there who have more specific missions to kind of help with these overall, you know, I guess you could say umbrella networks. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially in the regions.
I think you're talking about, Suzy, maybe you want to comment too, but this is cross-pollination, and it is a very powerful tool. It's where there's a matrixing of, like Anderson and local, and we also are working on that here. I mentioned that professional school group. That's so that we understand what they're doing, so we can engage their faculty in regional areas as they're traveling. There's a lot of things that can come out of that. Is that what you are saying?
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to say, like, to me, like, that's a pretty good way to, if you're looking for fresh blood on your board, you know, I think there's people who aren't being reached by, say, like, you want to send out, you want to use EA mailer, but there's going to be people who aren't reached by that, you know, and like, if you want to include, you know, a professional graduate school, I don't know that they're always going to be reached by using EA mailer. They're not always going to be on alumni affairs lists.
That's, you know, you bring up a good point, and I think we're still working on that. So let's have a discussion,
Okay.
you know, maybe at lunchtime,
Sure.
to see how we can move your point forward.
Okay, great. Let's talk about some strategies now for the good leadership pipeline to ensure the flow of fresh blood
strategies for a good leadership pipeline start with something very simple, an ask by a leader. Leadership recruitment is not a cookie cutter formula, but the ask is a principle in a successful leadership pipeline. That's pretty simple. So it's not exactly a handshake, but leadership recruitment is an interesting kind of courtship, if you will. Unless climate change starts producing cloudbursts of leadership, you have to fetch the water to grow your crop.
That's right. Always on the lookout. We're always on the lookout. I managed the UCLA Awards program for years, and my point mentioning that is I had 6 committees, I needed 6 chairs, I needed about 120 volunteers. I was looking everywhere. I went on jury duty, and the judge was an alum, and I got him. It's just like you got your tablet and you're signing people up. Yes, sir.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. What's the worst answer you could get? No. Yeah, C and I are going out after the meeting today. We're going to Costco because we think we can probably find. There's always the sweatshirt or the baseball hat with UCLA, and then you're kicking the other ones that went to that school and going elsewhere.
And even if you ask and the person says no,